To Mathias Cormann. He joins us live on the last day of this election campaign. Mathias Cormann, of course, this last day will be overshadowed and has been overshadowed by the death of Bob Hawke. What's your most fond memory of him?
Well, I actually ran into Bob Hawke on a trip to China, the Boa Forum, a few years ago, and we had a cup of tea and a nice chat. You know, he's obviously, he was a great Australian, a much-loved former Prime Minister who made a distinguished contribution to our country and, you know, who was recognised by all as an all-round good bloke. And, you know, our deepest condolences go out to his widow Blanche and his family.
One of the things I know that you're committed to, of course, is Australia's engagement with the world in economic terms and so on. Bob Hawke played a pivotal part, didn't he, in that sense, particularly in our region?
Look, I mean, you know, Bob Hawke made a tremendous contribution as Prime Minister. He made a tremendous contribution throughout his life, and it's a sad day for Australia, and we all mourn the loss.
This happens on the last day of an election campaign. How does this reshape this election?
Look, I mean, you know, obviously we pay tribute to Bob Hawke, a great Australian. We pay tribute to his contribution and we mourn the loss. But there is an election tomorrow, and the Australian people get to decide who will form government for the next 3 years. And it's an important decision. The election is very close. Every individual Australian has the opportunity to help shape the decision. And you know, our message to the Australian people is that for a stronger economy, vote for your Liberal National candidate. If you want to stop Labor's harmful, high-taxing agenda, vote for your Liberal National candidate. This is an election that is, you know, obviously much closer than many of the commentators predicted, and you know, every Australian has the opportunity to help shape the outcome.
Yeah, the polls today saying it's 51-49. Is that what your internal polling is suggesting? Is that consistent with that?
Well, I think that everyone recognises that this will be a very close election, and you know, that means that every individual Australian has the opportunity to help determine the outcome. And you know, again, I mean, you know, we've campaigned very strongly on an agenda for a stronger economy, to secure our future, to ensure that Australians have the best possible opportunity to get ahead. But of course, you know, there is the risk of the alternative agenda, Labor's high-taxing agenda, which would make our economy weaker, put jobs at risk and leave Australians worse off. And tomorrow, the Australian people get to decide. It's their decision as to what future they would like to see for Australia and for the Australian people.
The Coalition's pitch is for one of continuity. It's not time for a change. Do you recognise that you could have done things better in the last 6 years? What would you have changed, and what is your promise?
Well, look, I mean, we faced significant challenges on coming into government. We inherited a weakening economy, rising unemployment and a rapidly deteriorating budget position. And you know, we worked very hard to turn that situation around, to build a stronger economy, to create more jobs, to ensure that the budget gets back into surplus so that we can sustainably afford to fund all of the essential services Australians rely on. I mean, yeah, of course, I mean, you know, people know the ups and downs of the last 6 years, and we've made decisions to ensure that into the future some of these things are dealt with more appropriately, for example, by making sure that if the Australian people elect Scott Morrison as Prime Minister on Saturday, he will be our Prime Minister for the next 3 years, and he will continue to lead a government building a stronger economy, creating better opportunity for Australians to get ahead, building on the achievements that we've secured over the last 6 years. It certainly is our very strong advice to the Australian people that this is not the time to turn back to the high-taxing Labor ways of the past, because they have led to a weaker economy in the past and they would lead to a weaker economy again. They've led to rising unemployment in the past and would lead to rising unemployment again. And they've led to a budget mess in the past and would lead to a budget mess again. This is a time to keep on the same pathway. I mean, we are facing as a country some global economic headwinds, some downside risks in our domestic economy. This is not the time for Labour's high taxing agenda. This is not the time to risk what has been achieved on going back to this sort of discredited approach of the past.